Good afternoon, traders. Hello, and welcome back to the week. Here we are, Monday, 15th of June, 2020. Hope you're all well. Hope you all had a good weekend. And those of you joining us for the first time, hello. And this is the daily market update for Monday, 15th of June, 2020. 25 minutes sprint through what's been going on in the markets over the last couple of days, couple of stocks and sectors that might be of interest to you, and a little bit look at what, if anything's setting up for the afternoon session. As always, all information provided is for educational purposes only. Trading on margin carries a high level of risk, and you should be aware of all the risks associated with margin trading. So where did I think I'd start today? So a little bit different today. So this is one of our viewers here, Ed, asked me to have a look at a couple of South American banks, and unfortunately I couldn't get all of them up. I don't have access to South American equities on my platform. It's not something I really look at, but this is Banco Colombia. This is their listing on American stock market. So you can see for yourself there what the score is. There in terms of, let's just get the drawing tool up here. Okay, just bouncing along, right? Okay, under about 55, 56. Big drop down to 16. Okay, that is that's a bit of a quite the drop. And although we had a bit of a bounce there, okay, and although we created a higher low here and then a higher high, what we can see is that actually, we can see that basically the prices are dropped away, okay, over the last week or so, okay. So it's dropped from highs there about 34 down to what's that, around about 27, trading about 28.40. It filled this gap here, okay, just about 32, and your next gap's at 40 and stuff. So for me, if this is to continue, if this is just now forming another higher low, well then realistically I'll be looking at your next target is 40. You've got to break that gap, all right, before it can get up to 50 on that one. I don't know enough about South American economics to make a comment on whether that's good for the overall the overall index or the overall economy and stuff. As always, I say, I'm not an equity specialist or investment specialist. I'll just put them up and have a look and see what I see on the chart through my kind of momentum prism that I would view things. And I had a look at another one of them. So here we go. Who's the next in? Banco de Chile. Once again, this is their American listing. Okay, so another South American bank here, and we can see that in a bit of quite a sort of settled, sort of happy range there between about $28 and $30 there for a good while, and then it's just been in a downtrend from sort of kind of last September, so which just COVID has accelerated there. Here we go. COVID accelerated quite nicely into, all right, and having gone there from around about 28 at the bottom to 28 down to about 12.50. What we've seen is, we're seeing is a bit of a, you might say, well, Paul, there's a bit of a kind of upwards channel there, okay, a bullish channel there. So that might be one way to look at that particular chart price. Okay, it's certainly broken that kind of downward trend line into an upwards channel, okay, and it's just kind of grinding its way up there, right? So we're kind of a bit around the 000 of 20, all right. So maybe it'll come down. Maybe this will come down, okay, and hit 17 before continuing further north. Okay, that's what you'd be looking for, I think, in this particular case. But as I say, I'm no expert on South American equities, but I think that the chart of that looks a little bit better than the one we've just looked at there. So there you go. I hope that's something a bit different. As always, I say to people, if you want me to have a look at something, just ping me a note, okay? I'll have a look at them. I can have a look at see what's going on. This one is BP. All right, I don't think we've looked at these guys for a good while. All right, for a good long while, and it's kind of raised to my attention because they put out a press release this kind of this morning's statement. From being up there about what 570, okay, they were. I would suggest that they were in a block that was kind of always working its way down, and that a bit like the others we've seen that kind of accelerated into COVID. Okay, down lows to 220, and that was quite some gap down there. Okay, and a bit of a bounce up there, couldn't fill it. Dropped around, but this is still a higher low, and it's been kind of, I would say, there was a little block. It's tried to push up there again. Okay, last week, all right, tried to push up, but it's it still can't fill this gap here. Okay, that's having a challenge. It can't fill a gap, and you can see for yourself there. Okay, over the last week, it literally just sold off pretty strongly there. And well, I mean, if you saw, I think last week they sort of announced they were kind of cutting 10,000 jobs, and then also what they're saying, I think what came out today is that they are they're kind of, because of the change in oil prices and because of COVID, their forecasts are down by, I think, about 30%. So they're forecasting that Brent crude will average around about $55, all right, for the rest of the year. So we might look at that in a moment. But because of that, they have revised down their assets by up to $13 to $17 billion. Okay, so that's going to hurt any company, and you can see there that's kind of sell-off that's gone on there in the last 5 days, which would also have been, last week was a bit of a turnaround week as we discussed all the way through. So at the moment, that BP doesn't look terribly exciting to me when I look at it there as an opportunity. And then finally, here's Netflix, who I think we looked at about maybe a month or so ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago at least. And not unsurprisingly, they had the COVID drop. And we talked about these quite a bit early on in the lockdown, saying that, actually these guys, whereas everything else was falling out of bed, these guys were actually doing pretty well out of lockdown. Not surprisingly, really, everybody's at home and everybody was at home. Everybody was working their way through their the Netflix subscription. But we said, I think when we looked at it, it was a case of, as markets open up, or rather economies reopen and people go back to work, well, then the need is going to fall away. And, that's what I see here. In fact, when I see this here, I see this as a bit of a head and shoulders. Okay. And Thursday's candle here is that kind of key reversal, sort of just giving us a bit of a kind of a neckline like that, and that's a reversal pattern. So I'd be keeping an eye on that. There might be some opportunities there for a little look at what's going on there. So there you go. I think that's the sort of stocks for today. So why don't we switch across and have a look at the charts as always. So we're going to see what kind of week we have this week after the rather interesting one we had last week. So here we go. Hopefully should be back to sort of being able to hear my voice and see the charts, I hope. And what we can see here is these are the US indices on the weekly chart. So Dow, Russell, S&P 500, Nasdaq. Let's just move this out of the way here. And so what we're looking at is we had a bit of a last week was I said at the start of the week was risk off week. I mean, it picked up pace on Thursday, and Friday was a bit of a strange day. But I'm just looking at this on the kind of the weekly charts here, and you can see that there was we had kind of like railroad tracks, what you would call, straight up the week before, straight down last week. If we look at Nasdaq, the weekly chart, okay, last week, we pushed to all-time highs, but we closed back beneath the all-time high. We closed lower than the close of last week. Okay, it's a bit of a momentum reversal candle right at the moment. We can see this morning it's all gapped down a bit. We'll get onto that in a moment, but you can see that is a there's a reaction there at those highs. Okay, if we go down to the daily chart, we can see we talked about this on Friday. Okay, about how it just effectively reversed after the FOMC meeting. We dropped, we tried to pull back, and woomph. Okay, that's where we went. And then when we opened last night, we started going down again, and we're coming back. But we'll look at that in the European indices at the moment. But they're pretty much all of the same there. Okay, if I switch to the 4-hour charts there, after the rollovers of last week. Okay, and you can see how nicely correlated they were. We had we kind of we sold off strongly. What's the best example to use? Let's have a look at the S&P 500. All right. So on Friday, here we go. So on Friday, we kind of, after the Thursday, we had a bit of a rally on Friday, and then it sold off again. Okay. And then it had a bit of a bounce for the last hour or two before close. Okay. So it was a bit of a mixed session on Friday, but that's not a surprise when you have a big day like that. It's not a huge surprise if the market doesn't continue the next day. It's not a surprise there's a bit of chop and repositioning, and we gapped down into the open last night. Okay. And then we've trundled down, but actually we've been coming back during the European session, which we'll look at the moment. So remember, as I was saying, Friday afternoon closes are always Friday end of session closes are always interesting, and we're looking at how we reposition. If we reposition ourselves for another risk off, we'll have to wait and see what happens when the Americans open this afternoon in a short while. Certainly for if we look at the European indices here, okay, so might need to update a couple of these charts here this morning. But if we look at the DAX, okay, we look at the DAX. The DAX just did the same as what we saw in the S&P. They're big Thursday down. Friday tried to rally, fell away. This morning though, gap down, dropped down, but actually has rallied back up there. Okay, is rallying back up there. So you'd be looking at that as well. Let's just get the tool up here. Is this be looking at saying, well, is this the start of am I going to see a move here and then a move there and then a move there? Okay, is this an inverse head and shoulders that could be sort of just setting up for itself? So we shall find out this afternoon. Okay, so on we will look at it this afternoon. But that's the kind of thing I look at and then think, well, if price does that, well, I'll be a buyer. But if it doesn't follow that, well, then I'll just make a new plan and stuff, and based on what the market wants to tell me. I'm not in the habit of fighting it. But you can even see like the CACs this morning. It gapped down but came back. The IBEX gapped down but came back, and even the Swiss gapped down but came back as well. So despite all those gaps and stuff, they've filled those gaps this morning. Okay, and now we'll have to wait and see where the US session takes us in terms of being able to see what the scores and the doors are for this afternoon, and then really for the rest of the week. And if we look at go across to FX, so what am I here? Am I on dollar? All right, so let's have a look at the dollar. All right, so I'm kind of interested in this is the dollar profile. This is the Dixie. Okay, 4-hour chart. It's been a cracking trend. All right, cracking trend. As I say, if you can't identify that as a trend, well, then you're probably going to struggle as a trader. All right. But here, I talked about it last week. We had a bit of a false breakout, and we saw that on a couple of the dollar pairs. And then what we've seen is, towards the end of the last week, having had a false breakout followed by a thrust up. And now I am looking at, my plan right at this moment is, well, there's clearly some wicks there, and I'll be kind of looking at, well, could it come down here and then test, because that would then give us, another inverse head and shoulders there. So that's what I'll be looking for, as to see what could the market do that this afternoon. It might do it, might not. It really does depend what it wants to. But I just look at these areas and start to get interested, and it gives me a bit of focus in terms of the plans I will make. And if we just look at the dollar against them, we talked about dollar CAD. I said last week it was doing a false breakout there. All right, and it's what it did. It did a W bottom and woof. You can see that actually it flew up. Had a bit of a sell off on Friday afternoon, but even this morning, overnight, okay, it's trying to push to those highs, and so we'll see where that's going to take us this afternoon. Is that going to continue? Could that continue, or could that once again come down? All right, and do us. Okay, as that, that's what we'd have our eyes open for this afternoon. Certainly over the next session or two in the trades. Who else do we have a look at? Dollar yen. Okay, dollar yen's been a bit of a up the hill 1 week, down the hill last week. This week it's back around that level, around above 107. Okay, and it just hasn't decided what it wants to do yet. Yes, this morning was a kind of bullish engulfing candle after falling back a bit, but there's not enough there to get me excited. I'm sure the traders might look at it differently, but there's nothing, nothing really there that's enticing me. If we look at dollar against Swiss franc, all right, so we had risk off last week, so we had dollar weakness and Swiss franc strength. But actually, for the last day of the week, we had a bit of a reversal there, didn't we? We'd come down to it again. Now you'd be looking at, right, it's going to roll its way down towards this kind of 20 period moving average. Okay, that just we'll see. So what we're looking at is a case of what is the dollar going to do this week? I look at euro dollar after the cracking run up. All right, cracking run up there, nice run. Okay, pushes out to a new high, falls, breaks away, rolls over nicely. And well, once again, I'll be looking at here and saying, this is the inverse of the Dixie. So, could it get up there? Okay, and then put in kind of the kind of head and shoulders. All right, so that's what you'd be looking at. We can see this morning. All right, we've got a bit of buying. Okay, pressure coming in there. Is it enough to basically bump it up there, just past the 20 period moving average? We shall. We'll wait and see this afternoon. We had a look at. I think Kiwi dollar has been very strong, but we've not really looked at it as much as its cousin, the Aussie dollar, which has been powering away. This is Kiwi dollar on the 4-hour charts. And Kiwi dollar has been very strong. I think it's like number 2 on the strength charts. But even with that, last week was, as we swung that kind of risk off mentality, we can see even with that, we can see Kiwi dollar here. Okay, last week we talked about this last week. Having had just a great run for the month, we kind of double topped and rolled over. All right, and now you're looking to see, is it going to come back up to that area around about 64.80? And then once it does that, is it going to roll over again? Euro dollar, okay, 4-hour charts. I'd be looking at that as be sort of looking at that and say, well, all right, is that an inverse head and shoulders forming there? Okay, that's we've had a good run down for a few weeks. Okay, Euro weakness, Kiwi strength, but now you're looking at, is that an inverse head and shoulders, which would have us driving back towards the 200 period moving average. So we'll find out this week. Let's clear that. And even like dollar, even Kiwi against the yen, fantastic run, okay, which we talked about, fantastic run. But last week you can see that, that was a really pretty strong kind of risk off, okay, buy yen, sell Kiwi last week, and now you're looking at, well, all right, is it coiling up there because it can't make its mind up? Is it coiling up there to make its next possible move? Interestingly, kind of Kiwi dollar against Canadian dollar. Well, actually, last week was a bit of a strange one because what we had was, realistically, last week, it was just, fair value. It was just a rectangle, and it looks like it wants to try and break out of it. Maybe that's a kind of a bullish rectangle. It's a kind of continuation pattern, before it continues up north. But compared to what else we saw last week, was a very dull week there on the Kiwi against the Canadian dollar. And then to finish off, as always, let's just have a quick look at sterling here. Sterling's a bit of a mixed picture and stuff. So if I 4-hour chart here, so Kiwi pound against the dollar. Sorry, cable did roll over at the end of the last week. This morning, we're just trying to wait out and see what it happens, whether it's going to take a breather or whether it's going to pump before it dumps. That's what I'd like to see it do, push up and then roll over. But we shall see about that. Pound against yen, we talked about. Okay, pound against yen has just continued down. All right, after that, there was a head and shoulders pattern there, which we talked about. We talked about last week. All right, okay, head and shoulders pattern there with the neckline. I thought it would come back much faster and tap that trend line, but clearly there was risk was off and the selling was going on, and now we're here back at this bottom level. This is a bullish key reversal engulfing candle, so it's going to have some impact. I'd say it will drift its way to the 20 at least before it decides what it really wants to do. Pound against Swiss franc, it just dropped nicely, reversed nicely, and actually just stepped its way down. Okay, and this morning we're just in a little bit of I'd say that's a bit of a coil going on there at the moment. Okay, pound against Swiss franc, I'd be saying we're just trying to work out, right, it's coiling up before it's getting ready to make its next move, but we shall see where that particular move is. Euro against sterling, this is kind of interesting. Is that you know, the weekly chart and the day. I mean, the daily chart, you'd say, well, it's still kind of grinding a bit north, but the 4 hourly chart, it's, you know, I'd say that's definitely, you know, I was looking at that being in a possible head and shoulders pattern, but it is just literally bouncing between 90 and 89 there. Okay, it's just done that. We've talked about this on the 4 hour chart. It's just bouncing. Now this morning's put in a bearish key reversal engulfing candle, so yeah, maybe it's getting ready for a drift of its way back down towards 89 again. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A quick sprint as always. So there'll be a couple of interesting things coming out later today and tomorrow. As always, make sure that you manage risk. For those of you part of the FX newsletter, just remember this evening is the mid-month mastermind meetup. Okay, so just remember that's going to be on there from 7 o'clock UK time. The details will be sent to those members later on today. And yeah, I will see you back here tomorrow. Trade well, everybody, and I'll speak to you then. Cheers.